Close your eyes for a second. Not literally. You're watching a video. That would be a problem, but picture this. It's 6:47 p.m., late August. The light in Los Angeles is doing that thing it only does for about 20 minutes a day. Bleeding orange through a screen of smog and marine haze, catching the fronds of a queen palm and lighting them up like they're made of copper wire. Somewhere, a sprinkler system kicks on, hissing against a terracotta walkway that's been soaking up heat since noon. A screen door slaps shut. A lowrider bass line drifts out of a car window 3 blocks away and dissolves into the hum of cicadas. You can practically smell it. Chlorine, jasmine, and hot asphalt. That very specific, very Los Angeles smell that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. This isn't a memory. Most of us watching this weren't even there. This is something stranger. It's a collective hallucination. A version of a city that exists more vividly in our heads, stitched together from VHS tapes and movie stills and grainy home videos than it maybe ever did on the actual streets of Los Angeles. But here's the thing that should unsettle you a little, that Los Angeles, the one with the sunken living rooms and the peach stucco and the brass door knockers, it's disappearing, not slowly either. It's being sanded down, house by house, block by block, into something colder, something flatter, something that looks suspiciously like it was designed by the same 3 people, for the same algorithm, to sell for the same 7 figures. Drive through Los Feliz or Mar Vista or Sherman Oaks today, and you'll see it. The same matte black window frames, the same shiplap, the same eerie hospital white stucco boxes standing where a low-slung mid-century ranch used to sun itself. So today we're going to ask a deceptively simple question. Why did 90s Los Angeles just feel different? Not look different. Feel. Because this isn't really a story about architecture. It's a story about mood. About how a city built a visual language out of sunlight, stucco, and shadow, and how that language got erased in less than 20 years. We're going to dig into the color theory of the 90s LA exterior. We're going to walk through the sunken living rooms and glass block hallways of the era's interiors. We're going to figure out how Hollywood itself, through Heat, through Clueless, through 90210, built the mythology that we're all still chasing. And then we're going to follow the money, straight into the beige, gray-washed fever dream of the modern flip. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why, every time you scroll past an old photo of Los Angeles from 1994, something in your chest tightens just a little. Let's go back. Chapter 1. The Palette of the Sun. Here's a strange fact about color. It's never just decoration. Color is information. It tells you what decade you're in before your brain even processes what you're looking at. And no city on Earth understood, even accidentally, the emotional power of its own color palette, quite like 90s Los Angeles. Picture the archetypal home. Terracotta roof tiles, sun-bleached almost pink after a decade of UV exposure. Walls in dusty rose, warm adobe, faded sage, or a butter yellow so soft it looked like it had been left out in the sun on purpose. Because it had. Stucco wasn't applied to a house in 1993, so much as it was baked onto it, textured and imperfect, catching shadow in every divot and swirl. This wasn't a style so much as a climate response. Spanish colonial revival and its looser cousin, the ranch Mediterranean hybrid that dominated the San Fernando Valley, were built around one core truth. Los Angeles is a desert wearing an ocean's PR campaign. The materials, clay, stucco, wrought iron, existed because they worked. They breathed. They aged like skin, not like plastic. And then there was brass. God, the brass. House numbers, mailbox fixtures, doorknobs, stair railings, all of it warm-toned, all of it slowly oxidizing into this soft, worn patina that basically said, someone has lived here and lived here happily. Brass doesn't scream for attention. It just sits there, quietly reflecting the porch light, aging with dignity instead of announcing a renovation budget. Now, the plants. You cannot talk about 90s LA without talking about the canopy. Every street had this loose, semi-wild botanical chaos. Birds of paradise exploding out of a front yard, like something from a Roger Dean album cover. Bougainvillea creeping violently up a chain-link fence in hot magenta. Queen palms and Mexican fan palms throwing these long, dramatic shadow bars across driveways at golden hour. It was landscaping as atmosphere, not landscaping as HOA compliance. And then night would fall, and Los Angeles would light itself with halogen, warm, yellow-orange, slightly buzzing. The kind of porch light that draws moths and makes every house look like it's confessing something. Street lights had this sodium vapor glow, more amber than white, casting the whole city in a filter that modern LED lighting has completely, and I'd argue tragically, erased. Now let's do the comparison, because this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Walk through a renovated neighborhood today. The palette has been reduced, almost violently, to 3 notes: white, black, and gray. Stark white stucco, rolled flat and smooth, with none of that hand-troweled texture. Matte black steel window frames, sharp and industrial, more appropriate for a Brooklyn loft than a Los Angeles bungalow. Gray composite decking, gray pavers, gray, gray, gray. This aesthetic nicknamed, only half-jokingly, millennial gray, or the HGTV flip special. Even the landscaping got the memo. Out with the wild bougainvillea, in with drought-tolerant minimalist rock gardens and 3 symmetrical agave plants, standing at attention like they're bracing for a home inspection. Why does this matter emotionally? Because color is temperature, warm tones, ochre, terracotta, brass, read as inviting, lived in, human. Cool, monochrome tones read as clinical, transactional, staged. A 90s LA home looked like somewhere you'd want to fall asleep on the porch, with a beer sweating on the railing next to you. A 2024 flip looks like somewhere you'd get your photo taken for a real estate listing, and then leave. The old palette said, "Time has passed here," and that's beautiful. The new palette says, "Nothing has happened here yet. Please pay $2.3 million to be the first thing that does." That's not an aesthetic shift. That's a philosophical one. And it's only the exterior, because once you step through that door, into the actual bones of the house, the story gets even stranger. Chapter 2. Inside the 90s layer. If the exterior of a 90s LA home was about sunlight, the interior was about something almost opposite: retreat. Step inside, and the first thing that would hit you, after your eyes adjusted from the blinding SoCal glare to the cool, dim interior, was the drop, literally. You'd walk from the foyer into a sunken living room, 2 or 3 steps down, ringed by a low wall or a change in flooring that acted like a soft architectural hug. The sunken living room, or conversation pit, in its more extreme 70s holdover form, wasn't just a quirky floor plan choice. It was a psychological statement. It said, "This space is separate from the rest of the house. This is where you disappear." You'd sink into a low, deep sectional sofa, often in some impossible shade of dusty mauve or forest green, and the world would recede around you, literally below eye level with the rest of the home. Compare that to today's open concept obsession, where every square foot of a house is flattened into one continuous shadowless plane, so that a real estate photographer can capture the whole downstairs in a single wide-angle shot. The sunken living room resisted that kind of visibility. It wasn't built for a listing photo. It was built for a Tuesday night. Then there was the relationship between inside and outside, because in 90s LA, that boundary was gorgeously, almost recklessly blurred. Primary bedrooms often had sliding glass doors that opened directly onto a pool deck. You could roll out of bed, thick shag or plush cut pile carpet still warm under your feet, and be in turquoise chlorinated water within about 11 steps. No mudroom, no pool bath, with a $40,000 renovation budget. Just glass, concrete, and water, all touching each other like old friends. The pools themselves deserve their own documentary. That specific, saturated turquoise blue, diamond bright plaster if you want the technical term, glowing at night under a single submerged light, casting rippling cyan patterns onto the underside of a covered patio. It's one of the most instantly recognizable colors in American memory, and it barely exists anymore. Modern pools trend dark, matte charcoal, near black plaster, designed to look like an infinity edge reflecting pool, rather than a place where a 12-year-old does a cannonball. Inside, the technology of leisure was built directly into the architecture. The built-in entertainment armoire, often oak or cherry wood, with actual doors that closed over the TV, treated the television like something slightly indulgent, something you revealed rather than centered your entire living room around. Wet bars tucked into corners of family rooms, built-in bookshelves flanking a brick or stacked stone fireplace, wood paneling, real wood, not vinyl print, running along a den wall, giving the room the low, warm acoustics of a place designed for actual conversation, not just Instagram symmetry. And then glass block. If there's one material that instantly time-stamps a 90s Los Angeles home, it's glass block, used in bathroom windows, as room dividers, sometimes as entire shower enclosures. Glass block let light in, while keeping the outside world at a soft, frosted distance. It was privacy without darkness. It diffused sunlight into these dreamy, distorted patterns on tile floors. And honestly, nothing about open-concept farmhouse architecture has ever replicated that specific gauzy intimacy. Underneath all of it, literally, structurally, was post and beam construction. Popularized by the mid-century case study house program and still deeply embedded in 90s LA residential DNA, post and beam architecture used exposed wooden beams and large glass panels instead of load-bearing interior walls. It let architects build homes with soaring angled ceilings and huge walls of glass facing a canyon view without needing a maze of support walls chopping up the interior. The result? Rooms that felt expansive and sheltered at the same time. A genuinely rare architectural trick. Now look at the modern renovation. Open concept floor plans with vaulted, shadowless great rooms, kitchen islands the size of small boats, topped in the same waterfall quartz you'll find in 14,000 other listings across the country. Engineered white oak flooring, running wall-to-wall with zero visual interruption, in the exact same finish whether you're in Sherman Oaks or Scottsdale or suburban Ohio. The old floor plan said, "Come inside and get lost in here." The new floor plan says, "See everything all at once, immediately, so you can leave a 5-star review." We didn't just change materials, we changed what a house is for. And nowhere was that dream sold harder or more beautifully than on a movie screen. Chapter 3. The Cinematic Myth. Here's an important twist in this story. Most of us never actually lived in 90s Los Angeles. What we have instead is something more powerful and more distorted. We have the movies. And 90s Hollywood built not one, but two competing dream versions of the city. And both of them are still living rent-free in our collective imagination. The first is the Los Angeles of Heat. Michael Mann's 1995 masterpiece didn't just tell a story about cops and robbers. It built an entire visual religion around cold blue light, glass towers, and the eerie hum of a city that never quite goes to sleep. Neil Macaulay's apartment is almost aggressively empty. A stark, minimalist box overlooking the Pacific, all steel blue moonlight and negative space, designed specifically to look like a man with no attachments. Man shot Los Angeles at night like it was an alien planet. Sodium lights streaking off wet asphalt, downtown towers rendered in this glassy industrial blue that made the city feel simultaneously glamorous and desperately lonely. L.A. Confidential, released 2 years later, dug even deeper, not into the 90s directly, but into a nostalgic 1950s Los Angeles filtered through a 90s lens. All noir shadows, googie coffee shops, and moral rot hiding behind postcard-perfect neon. Together, these films built what we might call the masculine myth of L.A., a city of glass, steel, ambition, and quiet menace. Beautiful but cold, seductive but dangerous. Then, the exact same decade, sometimes the exact same year, you get the other Los Angeles, the one in Clueless. Amy Heckerling's 1995 teen classic did something genuinely radical. It took the sun-drenched terracotta and palm tree Los Angeles we've been describing this whole video and turned it into an entire aesthetic universe. Cher Horowitz's house, with its skylights, its abundance of natural light, its impossibly organized walk-in closet, wasn't just a filming location. It became a template. Beverly Hills, in Clueless, is rendered in soft pastels, warm plaid, and an almost aggressive optimism, all set against a backdrop of manicured lawns and Spanish-tiled rooftops. Beverly Hills 90210 did similar cultural work on television, week after week, for an entire decade. Beach sunsets, backyard pool parties, split-level homes with those signature sunken conversation areas we just spent a whole chapter on. For millions of viewers who had never once set foot in California, 90210 was Los Angeles, sun-bleached, privileged, endlessly warm. Here's the fascinating tension. These two cinematic Los Angeleses, the cold blue noir of Heat and the warm pastel sunshine of Clueless, shouldn't coexist. They're aesthetically, tonally, almost philosophically opposed, and yet both were shot in the same decade, often in the same neighborhoods, sometimes using the same architectural bones, just lit and colored to tell wildly different emotional stories. And this is the actual point. 90s Los Angeles wasn't one aesthetic. It was a whole spectrum of moods, and film stock captured all of them with a texture that digital simply cannot replicate. Because we have to talk about the grain. Movies and television shot in the 90s were shot on 35mm film, sometimes 16mm for TV. And that film stock had a physical, chemical relationship with light. Halation around bright highlights, soft, imperfect grain in the shadows, warm color temperature baked into the celluloid itself, especially in Kodak's stock of the era, which trended toward these lush ambers and greens. Even the cold blues of Heat have a warmth underneath them, a texture, because film doesn't render light, it interprets it. Digital video doesn't do that. Digital is clinical, digital is accurate, and accuracy, it turns out, is not the same thing as beauty. So, when we talk about why 90s LA felt different, we have to admit something a little uncomfortable. Part of what we're nostalgic for isn't the city at all. It's the film grain. It's the halogen warm color grading. It's the fact that every home video, every 90210 rerun, every VHS taped birthday party was captured through a medium that made light look like a memory, before it even became one. We fell in love with a city that was, in part, a photochemical accident. But the architecture underneath that myth was real. And that architecture, the actual physical load-bearing version of 90s Los Angeles, was about to run headlong into an economic machine that didn't care about film grain, myth, or memory at all. Chapter 4. The Flipper Epidemic and Millennial Gray. Let's follow the money, because that's really what this story has been about the entire time. In the wake of the 2008 housing crash, a specific breed of investor emerged from the wreckage: the house flipper. Buy distressed properties cheap, renovate fast, resell for a premium. It's not a new concept. Flipping houses has existed for decades. But what changed in the 2010s was the scale, and more importantly, the aesthetic strategy. Here's the core insight that reshaped an entire city's visual identity. Flippers don't renovate for the person who's going to live in the house. They renovate for the widest possible buyer pool on the tightest possible timeline, at the lowest possible cost, to be photographed for the smallest possible screen. Your phone, scrolling through Zillow at 11 p.m. That constraint produces a very specific design language, and it has a name now, mostly used mockingly: millennial gray. Think about what happens when you optimize a house purely for resale neutrality. You can't have opinionated color, the sage green kitchen, or the dusty rose bathroom tile that someone spent real thought choosing in 1991, because opinionated color risks alienating a buyer, so it gets stripped and replaced with grage, that flat, safe, emotionally neutral gray beige that HGTV shows spent a decade training an entire generation of home buyers to expect, and even demand. You can't keep the wood paneling or the built-in armoire, because those read as dated to a buyer trained on open-concept Pinterest boards. Even though dated here really just means has a specific point of view, so out comes the paneling. Down comes the sunken living room. Actually, this one's not just aesthetic. It's often a genuine ADA and insurance liability concern. A trip hazard that gets leveled flat, erasing one of the era's most distinctive spatial ideas in a single afternoon. With a concrete crew, you can't keep the glass block, because it doesn't photograph as luxury. Out it goes, replaced with a single sheet of clear glass, or, ironically, a matte black-framed window that costs 4 times as much to achieve 1/10 of the original's character. Shiplap goes up. Thin, ironically nostalgic, borrowed from an entirely different regional vocabulary: New England farmhouses, not Spanish colonial Los Angeles, via a wildly popular home renovation show that filmed in Waco, Texas, and somehow colonized the visual language of houses 3 states and 1 ocean climate away. Waterfall quartz countertops go in. Beautiful, genuinely, but also identical, from a flip in Van Nuys to a flip in Nashville to a flip in Tampa. This is the part that should really give you pause. The whole point of regional architecture, the terracotta, the stucco texture, the brass, the wild bougainvillea, was that it responded to this specific place, this light, this climate, this culture. Millennial gray responds to nothing except an algorithm. It's not regional. It's not even really American. It's global generic, the same aesthetic you'll find in flips in Toronto, in Melbourne, in Austin, because it was never designed to reflect a place. It was designed to reflect a spreadsheet. And the tragedy compounds itself, because flippers operate on thin margins and fast timelines, which means the craftsmanship disappears too, not just the color. That hand-troweled stucco texture we talked about in Chapter 1, replaced with a smooth, sprayed-on finish that's faster and cheaper to apply, and reads, even subconsciously, as slightly synthetic, slightly hollow, like a movie set version of a wall rather than an actual wall. Multiply this by tens of thousands of homes over roughly 15 years, across a city built almost entirely out of individual single-family houses rather than dense apartment blocks, and you get something extraordinary and a little bit devastating. A citywide aesthetic memory wipe, executed one listing photo at a time, entirely by market logic, with nobody in particular to blame, and everybody a little bit complicit. Because we're the ones who kept clicking on the white kitchens. The soul wasn't stolen. It was optimized out. Conclusion: a city on film. So, did 90s Los Angeles actually exist? Or have we spent this entire video chasing a mood conjured by Kodak film stock, halogen bulbs, and a handful of very good production designers? Honestly, both things are true, and I don't think that makes the nostalgia any less valid. Yes, the terracotta was real, the sunken living rooms were real, the brass fixtures oxidizing quietly on 10,000 front doors across the valley. That was real, physical, load-bearing history. But the feeling of it, the emotional weight it carries in our chests when we see an old photo that was built collaboratively by architecture and film grain and halogen light, and a decade of movies and TV shows that happened to be shooting in the most photogenic city in America at the exact moment its analog textures were at their peak. We're not nostalgic for a city. We're nostalgic for a convergence. A brief, unrepeatable moment when the actual built environment of Los Angeles matched the atmosphere of the films being made about it, captured on a medium that turned ordinary sunlight into something that looked like a memory in real time. And maybe that's the real reason it hurts to watch it disappear. It's not really about stucco color or window frame material. It's about the fact that texture, patina, individuality, the visible evidence that time has passed somewhere, that a family actually lived their life inside those walls, that's being systematically replaced by a visual language optimized for the fastest possible transaction. Smooth walls, neutral tones, nothing for the eye to catch on, nothing for a memory to attach itself to. Every millennial gray flip is, in its own quiet way, a house designed to be forgotten the moment you scroll past it. Somewhere out there, though, the old Los Angeles is still hanging on. A glass block window here, a wall of birds of paradise there, an untouched sunken living room in Toluca Lake, or a house in the hills above Silver Lake, still wearing its original dusty rose stucco, like it never got the memo. If you know where to look, and now hopefully you do, you can still find it. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Down in the comments, is what we're feeling actual nostalgia, a longing for something we lost? Or is it something closer to homesickness for a place we never actually lived? Built entirely out of borrowed memories, movie stills, and the warm, imperfect glow of 35mm film? I genuinely don't know the answer, but I think it's worth sitting with. If this kind of deep dive into the hidden emotional architecture of places is your thing, there's a whole world of these videos on this channel. Cities, eras, aesthetics, all examined the same way we just took apart 90s LA. Subscribe if you want to keep going down this road with me. And the next time that specific golden late August light hits a stucco wall somewhere in Los Angeles, take a picture, because in 15 years, it might be gray.